Welcome back. Why, with rising oil prices, should Quebec shift to being self-sufficient and invest in our own fossil fuels? More than half of Quebecers say yes. Let's get into it with an expert. Miguel Ouellette is Director of Operations and Economist with the Montreal Economic Institute. Welcome to the show, Miguel.
Thank you for having me.
So, you at the Montreal Economic Institute made a study that says, it's a poll conducted by Ipsos on behalf of the Economic Institute. It says that more than half of 52% of Quebecers think that the province should develop its own oil resources rather than importing all the oil it consumes. So maybe first of all, Miguel, tell us more about what the Economic Institute is all about.
Sure. So we are a public policy think tank. We are based in Montreal. We also have an office in Calgary. So we perform research on public finances, healthcare, the energy sector, and we try to disseminate our content to the media and politicians.
So if half of Quebecers are open to developing its own oil resources rather than importing it, why is the Quebec government setting up a complete and total end to oil and gas even exploration in Quebec? I mean, why is there seems to be a divide here?
That is a very big question indeed. So there is a huge divide because we've seen it in the poll with the numbers. We see that 52% of Quebecers, they want to exploit their own oil resources. But when we go to the National Assembly, 100% of MPs there think that we should not exploit oil resources. Maybe one voted against it, actually. So we see that there is a divide. And even if we go and talk about natural gas, people want more natural gas projects. So it's 57% of Quebecers that are willing to accept new natural gas projects. So I think that people understand that as for natural gas, it can be used to accelerate the energy transition in other countries, such as, for example, Germany, that they run on coal. So we could produce our own natural gas here in Quebec and then export it to other markets, such as Germany. But there is a huge divide, and you've said it, and I think it's going to be a big question this year with everything going on in Ukraine.
Well, yeah, with everything going on in Ukraine, and there's been a lot of talk since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. There's been a lot of talk in the U.S. and the rest of Canada of stepping up oil and gas production and doing more on that front, but that hits right up against the government's, both federally and provincially, positions on climate change and environmental groups. And as you said, like an overwhelming majority of M&As seem to be clearly against this. So, in terms of the oil and gas, and I remember when I was a minister, we had to deal with Anticosti, and there was a lot of controversy around these projects. What I'm wondering is that we've been saying for years in Quebec that there's oil and gas, but is there really oil and gas? Is there really something to exploit here? Do you know what the science says about this?
Yeah, so the science is quite clear about our reserves in natural gas. So here in Quebec, it would be around 93 billion. So it's
93
not
billion
like
what? 93 billion
dollars.
Oh, $93 billion in revenues.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, that could be added to our Quebec GDP. So that is not like we would say it's only a few dollars. $93 billion, we would need that money. So there are reserves. But what I'm thinking is, if we really want to know if there is actually a potential for natural gas and oil here in Quebec, the best way to know if there is actually this potential is to say to entrepreneurs, you are allowed to come here in Quebec, buy a permit, and if you respect our environmental rules, then you are able to find the natural gas and exploit it. And if investors are willing to do that, which they are, then it means that we have natural gas here. And if they don't succeed, it's going to be private money. So it's not like it's going to be taxpayers' money. So it's at their own expenses. But what we see right now is that many companies, many entrepreneurs had bought permits to exploit natural gas and petroleum here in Quebec. And now the Quebec government is saying that they're going to ban the exploitation of hydrocarbons. So I feel like we are not really understanding the benefits of exploiting those resources.
And how do you juxtapose that with the fight against climate change?
So I think here in Quebec, we have the ability to produce natural gas using hydroelectricity, which is not the case, for example, in the United States or in Qatar or in Saudi Arabia. So if we produce natural gas here, it's going to be way more green than if it's produced in other jurisdictions. That's one thing. Second thing, as I mentioned, a lot of countries, and it's Occidental countries that are industrialized, such as Germany, Poland, Spain, are running on coal. They produce coal as a source of energy. And now they're willing to import more natural gas to accelerate the transition. So I think us as Quebecers, we have a role to play in the energy transition. And I know it might sound weird to say we need to produce hydrocarbons to accelerate the energy transition, but we've seen it between 2010 and 2018. When we went from coal to natural gas in Europe, we saved more than 500 million tons of CO2. So that's huge. We can do something with our natural gas here in Quebec.
So yesterday, and it's no fluke that you're here today, because yesterday I had a representative from Ouellette, and she was saying, well, no, the idea is it's not to go towards more fossil fuels, but actually do more to develop renewables and clean technology. What's your answer to that?
So I completely understand that, and I do want a transition. But the fact is, right now there is a demand for petroleum, there is a demand for natural gas, and if we don't produce it here in Quebec, other countries are going to produce it anyway. So it's not a matter of who produces it, but it's more a matter of when will the demand fall. And the demand is not falling now. We expect that the demand for natural gas will increase by more than 25% by 2045. And I think that's good news in the sense that if the demand for natural gas is going up, it can mean that the demand for oil is going down. So we are doing the energy transition that we want to do. And we cannot just say that tomorrow everything is going to be electric. It's just not realistic. So I think there must be a transition, but we need to be intelligent in the way we do it.
So this poll is very interesting. So more than half of Quebecers think we should be developing our own oil resources rather than importing all our oil. But also there's an interesting reaction by Quebecers to environmental groups. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so when we talk about environmental groups, we've seen it in Quebec in many rural areas, such as Saguenay with GNL Quebec. I feel like people in rural areas, because 50% of them think that environmental groups, when they come in their areas and they talk against a project that is supposed to create jobs, that it's actually not beneficial. It's costly for the area. So that's 50% of Quebecers. So I think that the reason why we see that is that so many times we have a project coming here in Quebec and we have investors talking with the politicians and saying, we want to respect your environmental rules in Quebec. We have the private money. We want to do this project. And then sometimes the government will say, okay, that's a good idea. Yeah, we can start going forward with the idea. And after that, after a few months, after a few years, sometimes of investing money, investing resources, the government arrives and say, finally, no, we're not going to do that. And people in rural areas think in part that that's because of some environmental groups that put a lot of pressure and that are organized. So they put a lot of pressure on politicians, and it doesn't help with job creation and wealth creation in rural areas.
I just have a few seconds left, Miguel, but I have to get back to this point. I mean, the CEQ government didn't even have an environmental platform in 2018. They just didn't, and now they are convinced that they should ban all oil and gas exploitation in Quebec. and they're the more moderates on the environment. So, I mean, how can this evolve if you see the whole political class not willing to move on this?
I think there must be more education about hydrocarbons, more education about energy, and saying that we want to exploit natural gas doesn't mean that we don't want to do a transition. And I think that's the thing that politicians need to understand. And you know it more than me. If you are a politician now in Quebec and say, okay, I want to exploit hydrocarbons, and I am the only politician in Quebec saying that, there might be some political gains, but there will also be a lot of political costs. So I think with that poll, it shows that the costs might not be so high because half of Quebecers think that we should exploit our resources. So I think there should be more, discussion around that and more debates. That's the huge thing. There should be more debates about exploiting our natural resources, and we don't see enough debates right now.
Miguel Ouellette, Director of Operations and Economist at the Montreal Economic Institute. Thank you very much for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.